2012, and with the Olympic Games just around the corner, we here at Red Ice Radio, where so many of the esoteric and conspiratorial threads surrounding the 2012 Sion Olympics was initially woven in 2008. We are now going to lay out both the facts and the speculations surrounding this occult mega ritual. My name is Henrik Palmgren, and I want to thank you for tuning in today, friends, new and regular listeners. This is a program we dedicate to Rick Clay, his memory and his work. He passed way too early, and his story is one that has resonated around the world. The conspiracies and symbolism surrounding the 2000 Olympics has caught the attention of a lot of people. Even the mainstream media have been poking at it with a stick, from a few feet away, of course, terrified that something authentic will jump out at them. So, today we are going to talk with various guests about the upcoming opening ceremony and the potential false flag terrorist event that might take place during the Games, and many of the other theories of what might be unfolding, like some kind of UFO, ET event. But first, let's begin with a flashback back to Rick Clay from 2008.
It's been bandied around the internet quite a bit, but if you shuffle the Olympics 2012 logo around, you can spell the word Zion. But obviously Zion stands for the term New Jerusalem. Having seen the Ian Crane speech and everything, I had an urge to start my own research into this. I wanted to find out if what was saying could be proven, kind of thing. First thing that brought to my mind was the poem by William Blake. And William Blake wrote a poem in the 18th century called Jerusalem. And there's a paragraph, the final like few words in that poem says, "I will not cease from mental flight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." So basically, William Blake was a known 18th century esotericist with connections to the Freemasons. But essentially in that poem, we'd got an acknowledgement from a guy connected with esoteric research that they were intent on building Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. We're thinking, like, when we talk about the Olympics 2012, we're talking about something that's been planned for hundreds of years, and there's a lot of proof that I've dug up that can show that. There was a video released by the Olympic Committee, and this was a stadium design video. And it was a crazy CGI, I don't know what you want to call it, action film on how they're going to build the Olympic 2012 stadium. Given what Ian had spoke about with aliens and Independence Day style spaceships and stuff, this has got it all in it. Basically, within 40 seconds of this video, there's 4 chimneys that stand like an 1111, but then it moves into the most significant symbology you could ever see, with, like, you know, an Independence Day style mothership for a roof, little UFOs flying all around the London Eye. And then it ends up robotic streetwalkers in the middle of London stomping around the place towards the Olympic Stadium. I mean, it's pretty weird to watch it. Does this mean that there is a significant event looming for the Olympics? 1972 Olympics in Munich. Funnily enough, these were the world's first stage for global terrorism. You know, the very first global, declared as global terrorism. The first act was in the 1972 Munich Olympics. And on these Olympics, there were 11 Israelis killed. So we've got the number 11 now. And they were killed by a group called Black September, which is obviously the 9th month. So It's obviously a 9/11 you've got there. And that particular Olympics were host to 121 countries, which is 11 times 11. So you've got a significant event there with first global stage for terrorism, as it is. I started thinking, well, you know, the year 1984, there's obviously Olympics in that year. And it's synonymous with the George Orwell book of Big Brother and, you know, a completely, you know, oppressive state, if you like, a New World Order kind of background. And I briefly remembered hearing things about a closing ceremony in the 1984 Olympics, and did some rooting around on the internet, and obviously came across a video. In the 1984 Olympics, which were held in Los Angeles, they closed the ceremony, and the audience didn't even expect this, because most of the audience thought it was real at the time. It closed with a UFO flying over the Olympic Stadium, kind of communicating with the audience in a Close Encounters of the Third Kind style. Right. The UFO eventually closes down and lands in the centre of the stadium, at which point there's a load of smoke, and then this alien gets out and tells the audience that he likes what he sees there. So you got this really strange thing out of the middle of nowhere. No one was expecting it, and I don't know how you'd ever connect Olympics with this UFO event in the first place. Obviously, 1984 symbolic year, UFO landing.
Creatures of a day. Man is merely a shadow. But when God-given glory comes upon him in victory, a bright light shines upon us, and our life is sweet. When the end comes, the loss of flame brings darkness, but his glory is bright forever.
Has been created. And now,
methinks we have a visitor.
the alien himself. That is no one on stilts. That is a man 7 feet 8 inches tall.
Possibilities of human achievement. For almost 100 years, you have celebrated the best that humanity has to offer. You call it the Olympic Games. And for that, and for the cities which have kept the Olympic ideal alive, I salute you.
Just as suddenly he's gone.
The company who created that logo was a company called Wolf Owens. It's a brand agency. And this brand agency was set up by a chap called Wally Ollins, and this man was responsible for branding corporate Europe. So basically, you know, GE Capital, all these logos that have kind of sunk into the subconscious of sorts, these are all like created by this man called Wally Ollins, who created the 2012 logo as well. And it turns out his dad was a Freemason. So the chances are that, you know, there's an interview online where he references his dad trying to get him to be a Freemason. He never actually says whether he is or not. Chances are it's in the family, and you know there's these messages in the logos that this man's produced. It's a Freemasonic branding, you know, company for corporate Europe. At this point, you know, you've got this connection to Freemasonry with the logo and stuff, and it moves much higher than Freemasonry. That's just like the outside protection for this stuff. I basically loaded up, you know, Google Earth. Wanted to have a look at the London site from the air. I wanted to see, you know, what it is that's so special about this place. And you know, it just so happened that the particular site in Stratford was the only last bit of wasteland that was, you know, that was left vacant in London. It was the one last place that they could do things for something like the Olympics. So, you know, it's quite lucky that they had it in the first place. And what I noticed was I started looking at the actual street plan of this place, and you've got a number of roads that circle the site. And the first road is a road called the East Cross route, which is a reference to the Eastern Cross. You know, the Eastern Cross is an Orthodox cross, and it's a modified version of the Patriarchal cross. It's got 2 smaller cross beams across the side. The next road down, you've got Carpenter's Road, which encircles the site. Carpenter, who was a carpenter? Oh, good old Joseph. Next road down, you've got a road called the Great Eastern Road. So when you refer to something as the Great Eastern, it's obviously like the Great Eastern Star. So you look into the Great Eastern Star. It turns out that the Order of the Eastern Star is the largest fraternal organisation in the world that both men and women can join. It was founded by someone highly connected with the Freemasons, and their symbol is the pentagram. So this is the next road down. Moving on around the Olympic site, if you envisage we're encapsulating the whole Olympic site here, the next road along is Angel Lane. Famous angel is the Angel Gabriel. So we've got Angel Lane here. Next road along, we've got Temple Mills Lane, where the watermills belong to the Knights Templar. So another connection there. The Knights Templar were the poor fellow soldiers of Christ in the Temple of Solomon. And then encapsulating all of this is Church Road. It's obviously another biblical road name. All the way around the Olympics 2012 site, which you could call Zion if you go with the logo. Biblical road names surrounding the whole site. There's not one road name that's not biblical. So you start looking at that and you think, what the hell is going on?
This is William Henry. My website is williamhenry.net. I'm an author, investigative mythologist, and symbolist. My most recent book, The Secret of Zion, explores the symbolism of ascension, the galactic center, and especially the beaming garment worn by all the ancient Stargate travelers. I have been looking at this symbolism actually since back in 2010 when Anish Kapoor's orbital tower was first presented. This is that kind of serpentine tower that's the symbol of the 30th Olympiad that's parked right beside the games. It's to become the new icon for London. And everybody looked at this thing and was kind of like aghast. It's like, what is this thing? It looks like some kind of a serpent coming up out of the ground, this red serpent coming up out of the ground. Well, in fact, Anish Kapoor himself said it was designed for the Olympics, of course, and is modeled after the Tower of Babel, the Stargate to Heaven, or Ladder Tower or Stairway to Heaven. And it's not surprising coming from Kapoor, whose noted artworks often feature wormhole motifs. But what got me about it, Henrik, was the fact that Maya's 2012 symbolism describes a serpent rope, an umbilical cord, this mysterious transportation system emerging from the galactic center in 2012, out of which or upon which rides the Mayan savior figure Quetzalcoatl. And what's fascinating is that when you put the diagram of the Mayan serpent rope or umbilical cord coming from the galactic center next to Anish Kapoor's tower, London Tower, you're seeing an amazing correspondence. And with that, I started really putting a keen eye on the 2012 Olympics for more Stargate symbolism. And boy, it has not disappointed. Ever since then, we've started to see an acceleration of this Stargate wormhole symbolism appearing in Britain. It's connected with the rainbow motif, which is the rainbow bridge as an interchangeable symbol with the Stargate or wormhole. Popping up all over Britain are these magnificent art installations featuring the rainbow. And then lo and behold, next thing we get is an announcement of the mascots for the Olympic Games, the London Olympic Games, Wenlock and Mandeville, these little one-eyed alien-type creatures, or almost alien-looking creatures, that ride a rainbow to the games. And they've been featuring this whole rainbow motif in their story. They've made film clips out of the rainbow, Adventures on a Rainbow, Rainbow Rescue, and Rainbow to the Games. And one starts to wonder, are we talking about this symbolism as being possibly like downloaded from some cosmic source where we're talking about all this rainbow bridge symbolism, Stargate wormhole symbolism? And the ultimate question, is it possible it's some kind of an alignment with the center of the Milky Way galaxy, just as the Mayans had predicted?
Is it possible, William, that they are aware of this symbolism and want to put it out into the mass consciousness, or are they unknowingly participants in a greater plan here? What do you think?
I think it's a combination of both, actually. I think there are probably plans, designs, themes that are submitted. It's uncanny. I just have to say this. It's almost like my work as happened with the Norway Spiral interview we did a couple of years ago. From time to time, my work intuits, even predicts some of these future global Stargate events. And London 2012 is no different. And I'm just simply following the trail of Sion, which is a very key piece, as you know, in the London Olympics, because as Rick Clay pointed out a number of years ago, the London Olympics logo itself spells Sion, or Zion with a C. They both mean the same thing. My piece is this. Sion is a reference to Jerusalem, to the New Jerusalem, to the Second Coming and the Sons of Sion and so forth. But it is also, if you follow the trail of the mystic trail and symbolic trail of Sion as found in Judeo-Christian tradition, you are led to the center of the galaxy as the actual location of Sion. It is inhabited. It's inhabited by just humans made perfect who are portrayed as in rainbow-type bodies or as rainbow beings, and they seem to come and go from the galaxy. Now, if I know this, Henrik, and I've just been researching this stuff 25 years, I'm not part of some secret cabal. If we're alleging some secret cabal does know this, then they are probably reading at least the same information that I am, and perhaps are in contact with these very beings. I mean, I know that sounds like a stretch, but it's either we are talking about a contact here with this race, or this is a cosmic download being received by various artists, Anish Kapoor, various other individuals involved with the planning, and maybe even, I can go so far as to say, myself included, since my book, The Secret of Sion, is a sort of key or guidebook to the Olympic symbolism. The official explanation is that they have taxi symbols on them. They're one-eyed because of all the number of cameras in London. But yet on another level, I mean, with them riding the rainbow to the games, you have to ask, well, what are the odds that you've got this rainbow motif going? It's directly connected with Zion. And here we're talking about these rainbow beings manifesting as the mascots of the games. I mean, it's coincidental, it's fun, it means nothing, but it might mean a lot, actually. It might mean everything. And I think you can go overboard reading some of the symbolism. You can make connections that seem to be solid but might not be that solid. But still, there is unquestionably another layer of meaning that is here to be interpreted with all the symbolism in London. The opening ceremony, when they hauled out this incredible model of London with the snaking Thames beside this giant pillar or staff almost, and then the recreation of Glastonbury Tor, that's pretty mind-blowing stuff. That's a real tip-off that they're doing something, a mega ritual of occult significance here, some kind of profound ceremony is unfolding. That river that snakes its way through the center of the opening ceremony is, of course, the Thames, but at another level, it's the Milky Way itself. And what we're going to see there is this tree serpent symbolism come together in a profound way, just as Maya 2012 symbolism features the tree of life, the cross of life, this cosmic or starry alignment of 2012, and the serpent rope that winds its way along it. So we're being treated here to a master stroke of this occult symbolism, and we won't know its ultimate meaning, of course, until the event actually happens, and then that will, of course, be open to interpretation. But I'm headed to London next week just to have a look-see. I'm going to take a climb up into Anish Kapoor's tower and peer down at the Olympic Stadium just to see, feel, experience it for myself, and then I'll just certainly be glued to the TV on the opening and closing ceremony, because if Madonna's halftime show at the Super Bowl is any indication, I think they've got something absolutely wild in store for us.
It's an interesting director of the opening ceremony, Danny Boyle. He's done some interesting movies, of course, and for July 22nd, the opening, they have spent about £27 million for the opening ceremony. So that's quite a bit. What can you say more about the Glastonbury and Jesus connection, William? How significant is that, do you think, to these games and to the opening ceremony and the overall symbolism that you've been following?
Well, here's the overall idea. Jesus is an avatar of or from Zion, the galactic center. And all of the symbolism, the selection of Glastonbury Tor and its references to the William Blake Jerusalem poems, all points to this plot, if you will, that we're going to be seeing some elaborate ceremony where we might even see some kind of a reference to a messianic appearance. People try to tie Prince William, into this whole scenario. I'm not so sure about that. I think it's very fascinating, but I think we're going to see maybe some kind of surprise special effects, not to the extent of Project Bluebeam, but something along those lines that will certainly get our attention.
People speculate on many different things about the games, of a potential UFO landing, the real deal. Some people say it might be a fake one. There's a possibility of false flag terrorism during the events. We've seen an incredible militarization of the games as well. So there's a flip side to some of the things we talked about here. How significant is any of this in your view, William?
Well, it's bread and circus time, isn't it? Da do 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 da 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 da. Let's just keep it simple. And we sometimes fall into is this idea that it's all totally meaningful, when we really need to keep our eye on the big picture here. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think the symbols themselves, the basic symbols of the tree, the serpent, the Tor, the gateway, the rainbow, those are the key aspects to be focusing on. And the militarization and all that is just something I haven't paid a lot of attention to, but might take some time to do so.
If we're in the context of the rainbow people or the enlightened ones, the shining ones that you've been talking about, do you think that they would have an interest of literally and physically announcing themselves during an event like this?
I think it's a very good possibility, because it's mass consciousness gathered together in a state of heightened expectation that something wonderful is going to happen, even mysterious. That's the track record of the opening ceremonies of the games. There's and especially the closing ceremonies, of course. there's always a pill in that hamburger. There's always something in there for those with eyes to see. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did use an event like this. I mean, that became kind of clear to me. I referenced Madonna's halftime show a moment ago. When I watched that, it was so rife with symbolism that it became clear this is exactly how a cabal or a New World Order type group would introduce this New World religion. It would be at a global ceremony such as this, where the pill gets slipped into the hamburger and those with eyes to see get the message. I think there's been enough talk among intelligent people around the world that a new consciousness is emerging. And it is clear that this new consciousness has a specific set of symbols: the tree, the serpent, the rainbow, the wormhole, and advanced or awakened humans who manifest in the rainbow body or as rainbow beings. And I've been tracking this profusion of this rainbow imagery. I mean, gosh, here in America, we have Frisky's cat food. And when the movie Puss in Boots was out, they had this amazing commercial where Puss had this magic wand. He visits a cat in a kitchen, uses the magic wand to open up a rainbow wormhole. Puss and this other cat jump through it to the magical cat world, do all kinds of magical things. Puss uses the wand to open up the rainbow wormhole again and return them to the ordinary world. We're using Stargate's wormholes and rainbow imagery to sell cat food these days. So it's anchored in our consciousness. It's everywhere, and it's all part of the consciousness of mankind adopting and accepting this profound symbolism of this new consciousness, which is actually the ancient consciousness. A mega magical ceremony is what is being offered here. And at this moment, we don't know exactly what the message is. We can speculate, we can read the signposts, but it won't be until that day where we know exactly what it is they want us to feel, think, or believe. But it will be crystal clear by the end of the opening ceremony. We're going to have over 1 billion pairs of eyeballs, all tuned and focused on the same event at the same time. And those who know the power of the thought sphere and can link that with the power of the cloud will have tremendous power at their fingertips at that moment to move or shift human consciousness.
Now, if we go back for a moment here to the Glastonbury tour, which is again one of the items, I guess, they're going to have replicated during the opening ceremony. There's been authors speculating that one time it was the possible location of the Holy Grail, etc., another kind of theme that you've been following as well. So it's very echoes of the, as you said before, William, the New Jerusalem. It's a play on Jesus. It's a play on, I would say, more of an esoteric Christianity perhaps than an Orthodox one. Is that correct, do you think?
Definitely, because the esoteric Christianity is the green religion. It's the religion of Osiris. It's the religion of the ancient pagans, and it's all based on the concept of rebirth, renewal, regeneration, resurrection. Very controversial terms because politically it's all being spun into green politics and totalitarianism. But this is kind of the underpinnings of what we're talking about, and especially that inclusion of the tour. You're right. I mean, this is something I've been writing about, and in fact, I'm writing a new book right now called The Kit about the desire by the New World Order types to assemble these various relics, including the Ark of the Covenant and the wand or scepter of power, the flask of manna, the cruse of the anointing oil, and other power tools or objects. And this is exactly the type of event you would expect them to create in order to display such events. And if the Ark of the Covenant symbolism shows up there at the tour in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to be all over it and sounding the alarm bell that this is a total false flag type of event, and we really want to be careful with who we're dealing with here. Just, hey, enjoy it, everybody. I mean, this is some really heavy stuff, potentially dark stuff, but at the same time, it's a major global celebration. It's a time for all of us to put our own thoughts into this, to shift it in the manner that we would like to see shifted in. And this is in part why I'm going to London next week, just to have a look-see for myself and to really get a sense of, wow, I mean, what is it going to be like when we are truly in a global civilization? Whether you like that idea or not, we're about to experience a major manifestation of that new culture, that new earth, in less than a month.
Well, that's interesting too. As one more point on that, because it feels, as I've been watching the news, that at the same time as there is an openness and a celebration, again, the flip side of that, and we don't have to overfocus on it, but there is a tendency now to also lock down things. There's a fear also surrounding the games because, again, of the reality of terrorism or false flag terrorism as well. So I mean, it's really
people are. Yeah, they're like holding their breath because everybody knows something could happen. And that's part of the mix of the energy that's here. And that's when we're highly suggestible, is when we're on the edge of our seats wondering if it's going to happen, if there's going to be some kind of a terrible event surrounding the Olympics. I certainly hope there isn't, but I'm fully aware, as you're saying, that's a very good possibility.
Hello, this is Stuart A. Swerdlow for Expansions.com. I look forward to seeing you and hearing you on my radio shows, on my website, and at all future events. The Olympics this year are too much of many things coming together to leave it as a simple event. So the Illuminati would never let that happen, of course. It's the year 2012, so it's the end times according to the Mayan calendar, which really isn't correct anyway. It is also the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. It is also in London, the center of the global empire. So there's many factors coming together all at once. And when we look at why the British have ground-to-air missiles located on the rooftops of private residences around the area, we have to assume that they are expecting something to come from the sky. And so it is my belief, and I may be wrong, but it is my belief that this would be the perfect opportunity for the Illuminati to stage the alien invasion with billions of people focused on one place on the earth at one time. They can have anything coming in the sky with Blue Beam Project. They can use the missiles to fire at them. They can make quite an event. Plus, it is my understanding that they will have the Queen coming down the Thames River on a destroyer. So very much the commander of an army, that she will be seen as the queen of that army. And so it's a very, very symbolic time. And I think we can expect something of a global proportion to happen then.
So is that where it begins and ends, do you think, with the false flag UFO invasion? And maybe we can talk a little bit more specifically about that. Is this a landing? Is this something we're going to see and then it disappears? Or is this going to be like official contact and disclosure and the whole package here?
The Illuminati or the New World Order are never going to give real disclosure. They may give a kind of information that they want people to understand, which I have seen happening for the last 6 to 9 months. Just about every week now, there is some kind of information on the news related to outer space. For example, the oceans on Titan, even information about Kuiper Belt energy heading towards the asteroid belt and towards the Earth. Many, many things going on in space. But as far as a staged alien invasion is concerned, it will most likely involve Blue Beam Project, which will project holographic images into the lower atmosphere of the planet so that people will think there is an invasion fleet. They may even use satellites to transmit laser beams towards the ground to make people think that the Earth is under attack. They have many ways to make things look real when, in fact, they're all artificial.
Is this why they have the build-up of the military in London now as well, to actually in some way respond to this false flag thing that they're setting up?
Absolutely. There's no other reason for them to build up. I mean, there hasn't been a military buildup like this in Britain since World War II.
Right.
They're obviously expecting something, and the mere fact that they have occupied the rooftops of private homes without permission is very significant, because that would only happen under wartime conditions when personal rights and property, respectful of personal property, is no longer valid. So in effect, they're already showing a state of war.
Do you think that this will happen during the opening ceremony or during the games, or maybe a little bit after? There's been some, obviously people have different takes on this, and maybe they will leave the opening for what it is. It's going to be, some kind of event. I want to ask you a little bit more about that specifically. Maybe if there might be some kind of, Svengali hypnotizing mind control thing happening during the openings there. But if there's a timeline on this, when do you think it actually will happen? Opening, during the games, or after?
No, I don't think it will happen in the opening because they want people to have an attention. They want people interested and focused on the events so that for a day or two or three, people are watching under normal circumstance. Feel that the opening ceremonies and even the peripheral accoutrements during the day subsequent to that will be triggering or mind control programming triggers for Green Star programming, which will activate those functions in those people watching. I think if I were doing it, that they would probably wait a few days at the world's attention. They would probably have in the very beginning of the Olympics some kind of normal events of the Olympics that are exciting or maybe keeping people at the edge of their watch. Maybe some kind of competition between two countries, rival countries, or two rival athletes. That will make people want to watch even more. And it will be during that time then that they would stage something. I would imagine they would do it more in the evening or nighttime because the blue beam would be more apparent. Although, if you remember, in the last several months, in daylight, there have been people in London filming UFOs over the bridges, over the rivers. Tourists have been taking pictures that have been shown on CNN and BBC of UFOs in broad daylight. So they are already preparing for this as if they were testing to see if people can notice these things in the daylight.
Wow. Could that be UAVs and stuff like that? That, again, the military is actually taking the opportunity to just test some of their gear and spy and everything else during the time as well?
Yes, of course. And, the U.S. does have bases in Britain and in nearby countries. And so it's very easy for U.S. advanced aircraft to make overflights of British territory. And if you even recall, a year or so ago, these British pilots that were flying towards London saw huge UFOs off the coast. They were, I think, over 1 kilometer wide. That happened at least twice. Last summer. So they're definitely in preparation.
I want to ask you a little bit about the colors, the letters, the overall theme, if you will, that has been chosen for these XXX games, as they're called, the 30th Olympiad that we're having. Your comments on the Zion logo, if you recast the 2012 numbers, you can spell out Zion if you have anything to say about that. But furthermore, very interesting color choices, I think, in some cases as well, not only for the Olympics logo, but we have these one-eyed alien mascots, Wenlock and Mandeville flying in on the rainbow. There's kind of an alien theme, and again, a prominent, very, very bright colors here. What do you think is the significance of that, Stuart?
Those colors are triggers because that would activate Green Star programming, sexual ritual magic programming, and subsidiary programmings like Vessel in sexual ritual, etc., which I write about in my books. These are triggers. They're to get the audience into an altar that is connected to this Green Star or alien programming. And as far as Zion is concerned, the Illuminati, and especially the Windsor family, claim a direct descendancy from the Christ figure and Mary Magdalene, which I've also written about in my work. And so they will ultimately use this to prove their authority or their justification to rule the earth, since they are the descendants of Christ. And that's what they will use this for.
The line of David is also one I've heard. I don't know if that specifically also is related to the Christ line, but there is a couple of bloodlines, I guess, going back to the biblical era then.
Yeah, because, the Christ was supposedly descendant from line of House of David as well. Right.
So, I've heard other people, Stuart, talk about that they would take the opportunity in some way or another to crown Prince William as the king of the new age or something like that. Some people claim it's an Antichrist archetype, but they will try to push it as the Christ or the Savior. Any comments on that?
Yes, I've heard of this, and I do believe that this is a distinct possibility, but his mother, Princess Diana will be proclaimed the Queen of Heaven, and they will show that she had a direct lineage to the Christ line as well. And in fact, as you may know, in Norway, there is a woman who supposedly is channeling Princess Diana and claims that she was the grandmother of Jesus, which actually makes her even more have more seniority than the Virgin Mary, who was only his mother. So they're really putting a lot of power behind this, a lot of lineage, DNA justification behind what they're going to claim is their right to rule the world. And when this staged alien invasion comes, we will not see who these invaders are. They will not show that to us. However, there will be a savior race that will come who will say they've been monitoring the situation and they're saving the earth and getting rid of these invaders. And then the savior race will show that they are our ancestors and they created life on the earth. And they will then bring in the cloned Christ, who will say that the New World Order is his new holy empire and we must all follow it and the New World religion. So it'll be a very nice, neat little package that will be instigated by the staged alien invasion.
Now, if that timeline, if that fallout of events is true, then obviously something here is hinged on the 2012 Olympics. It seems like this is where the agenda goes into overdrive. This is where they actually put in the first move to begin to openly announce this, I guess. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, let's face it, there's only 6 months left or less actually to their agenda of December 21 being the end of their current situation, so that by the end of this year, they want to have complete global domination. And so they need to act fast now. Everything will happen quite in succession. I think the second half of this year that we've just started is going to be quite interesting and many, many events one after the other.
Now, there's quite a bit of interesting religious undertones over all of this that we talked about, or messianic as well. In the opening ceremony, there's references to William Blake's famous poem. And then there's also the Glastonbury tour, where allegedly the Holy Grail was buried. That's going to be replicated during the opening ceremonies. They're playing a lot on this. What do you think the reasoning is for this, and how aware are the people who are designing or behind the choreography or whatever you want to call it for the opening ceremony? We know that Danny Boyle, the film director, has been charged for taking care of this 27. What was it now? £1 million, I think, overall, the opening ceremony. What's their reasoning, do you think? And how aware are they of this kind of symbolism that they're playing on?
From what I understand, most of the people involved in the hands-on are given the information, given the symbolism, and told to use it in a certain way. They themselves may not know why they're using those symbolisms, but they're told to do so. It is the royal families or the Illuminati families themselves who create the images, who create the symbols, and then delineate them or distribute them to those who will work with them to present to the public. I know, for example, that this is done in Hollywood. I know when I worked in Hollywood, I was told by many producers that every year by the government and by certain families, they're given certain stories to present to the public, and they're told this is how it's supposed to end up. Now write the story that leads up to it, and here are the symbols. So it's kind of like that. And these people don't know why they're doing it. They don't know really what it means behind the scenes, but they know they have to present it.
We've seen an incredible influx as well, Stuart, in the kind of alien invasion movies. And usually it's actually, well, it's really realistic at this stage, the way they've developed the special effects and everything. And it's usually in suburban areas. It's military fighting with UFOs and everything else. It feels like they're really been trying to push these buttons and almost acclimatize people to this very basic concept. But still, it would be an incredible shocker to the majority of people if something like this happened. And as we know, Stuart, during shocking events, traumatic events, there is an opportunity, if you will, for actually instigating some level of mind control or manipulation of people, correct?
Yes, of course. But, as I mentioned, in the last several months, almost every other day, there's been some kind of story on the news about outer space. For example, they said that in our galaxy alone, there were 300 to 400 million Earth-like planets. And they even said by 2014 we will discover a planet with life on it. So how would they present these figures unless they knew for sure? And they also mentioned not long ago that it would be very likely that much of the life on other worlds would be reptilian-based. I mean, this is unconventional news that they're saying this now. So in a way, people who are indoctrinated by the global services like CNN, Fox, BBC, etc., they've heard this before. They expect this. So maybe it will not be such a big shock. The truth is that the reptilian civilization was here first. They did colonize the Earth first, and humans or mammalians came afterwards. So from their perspective, it's their planet, and we are the invaders. So yes, I believe that this is how it will be presented ultimately. Of course, they will not give the full truth. They're not going to tell people that they're mind controlling and that the Olympics and the alien invasion were all staged for their public consumption. I don't think they will say that. But they will present it in such a way to make people acquiesce to the idea that reptilian energy is more powerful, is original, and has the right to be here. And I think that's already been put into the public mind already.
Is this year's Olympics a global mind control event?
All Olympics, every year. And even the location that they choose are a global mind control event. But this year, particularly, because it's 2012, because it's the Diamond Jubilee, this is a very, very significant Olympics, and we really need to keep our eyes on it.
Can you briefly, I want to go back to that, just tell us what Green Star programming is then, for those who don't know?
Green Star programming is designed for various types of alien communication, interaction, and awareness, so that under that Green Star umbrella, you will find contactees, abductees, channeling, etc. And so this was designed back in the 1960s by the U.S. government, who created the New Age and all of these alien contacts and information, so that people would eventually be led to this point where it will be completely accepted. And we can even add the Vatican into all of this, because remember, in the last couple of years, twice the Vatican has said that there are aliens out there and that they are our brothers in Christ.
That's right. They what was it again? They were they not in they didn't need baptism or being baptized, or because they were already saved, right? Or what was the deal there?
Well, the information was that they may be so spiritual that they already live under the grace of God and do not need to be saved. Right.
That's right. Now, do you think that, well, both people visiting London this summer and people living there will be in trouble? Is there actually a real potential danger for an actual terrorist event, or again a false flag one? Is that something you're concerned about, or that you think people in the area should be concerned about?
Well, definitely. I think people living in the London area or near any Olympic venue should be observant and concerned about what's going to happen, because I really feel something will happen, and I cannot pinpoint on what spot exactly it's going to occur, but I would take amazing precautions, and I would stay away if possible. I would not be in that area during the Olympic time period.
Yeah, well, that's right. One of the insiders, and we've been trying to get him on the program as well in unison with this show here. But he definitely mentioned again then that the G4S, or the G-Force, as I call them, who are behind the security of the Olympics, are purposely looking for incompetent people, and also the fact that he was told in some way that you, as a worker in here or a security agent, are going to be responsible for the evacuation of London, or the biggest historical event or in the history of London, which is just an interesting little tidbit that I haven't heard him expand more on that yet. But I don't know. Do you think they would tell actually the people involved in this in a subtle way like this, if it really was true that they were planning something?
Yeah, they have to, because the staff must be aware or expect something to happen without maybe knowing exactly what it is, because they need certain programmed responses from that staff that will enhance the entire event and make it look as if it's a natural event or something that happens suddenly and they didn't expect. But they need to be prepared for that. So yes, the staff would have to be advised that something will happen. I would to the athletes and the countries that win certain awards, because those are also significant and symbolic. Just like all sporting events, especially in the United States and in major countries, the cities that win and in the locations that win, those are very symbolic. The names of the teams, for example, the colors that they wear, all of these are symbolic and represent a mind pattern or a mind control pattern that they want to impose on the public.
I'm Bob Schlenker, blogging through theopenscroll.com and the Open Scroll blog, which is theopenscroll.blogspot.com. I've got a YouTube channel that is 17 Stormy 17. I do a lot of reverse speech and a lot of varieties of occult types of signaling and logos. I look for anything that speaks to me of an occult intent, that there's a ritual behind it. And there's a number of themes that I've been tracking in other places, and there's a cross-threading with the Olympics really heavily. And it's really sinister. It looks like there's a threat behind almost all of it. And the nature of the mass ritual suggests some things that really need our attention because, they can't say they didn't warn us if some really bad things happen, because there's plenty that should be taken as a warning.
Can you give us an example of that? Are you talking about false flag terrorism or are you talking about something else here?
Well, some of it would have to be in the category of false flag, because if they're announcing it in advance and kind of weaving in the testimony, that witness right there says, hey, we've got an intent. We're not really telling you up front, but read between the lines. And so you have no excuse when it happens. People who've looked at 9/11, what happened there, and some of these other terrorist events have seen imprints in advance that are basically warnings, and they describe in some detail what's about to take place. And then when it happens, it is something that we recognize looking back after the fact that, hey, they warned us.
Can you give us an example of this, of how you've seen this or spotted this in the run-up here to the Games?
For example, the Olympic ceremonial costumes. They have a really odd red scarf coming out of one of the dresses. It's purple. There's zippers on it. And the way this comes out, it can't really be taken any other way than disembowelment. It looks like bloody guts. And if there wasn't a lot of disembowelment going on with satanic ritual and associated with things like MKUltra and Monarch programming, it probably would just be a dress with some kind of funky design. But given that disembowelment is a big part of the ritual and ritual magic, this is just one element that they've put right out in plain sight that they really intend to use for all of the 805 award ceremonies, with a podium as a ritual altar. And the combination of the two shows a high level of ritual magic that shows bloody guts, which could be giving us an inkling that there's going to be some kind of a microbial or bacterial or biochemical type of event that's planned that's going to impact the intestines.
Interesting. So this is a literal thing that might be happening during or after the Games, perhaps.
It could be. I allow that. There's some pretty smart people and some pretty devious people, and if they wanted to distribute some kind of organism to introduce it at the Olympics, and then all the people go back home to their home areas scattered throughout the world and spread whatever it is, then this agent could later be triggered by some means. This is certainly doable within the range of technology available. And there's been quite a bit of news about different kinds of threats with bird flu, with swine flu, with other types of agents. That's a big focus right now in the news. So if you put all these things together, the bloody guts dress does really look pretty ominous, because it's hard to see it as anything else. When you look at that picture that they put out, and there's quite a few of them out there now, and you think about bloody guts, why would they do that? And could it really be taken as anything else? I don't think so. It's just not reasonable. It's too obvious.
Now, here's a question that some people have been tackling, different points of view on this, of course, but I want to get your take on this, Bob. Why would they tell us if this is a hint? Obviously, there's a question that first of all arises: are the designers of this costume aware of it, or have they just simply been getting the orders from somewhere? And the second follow-up to that is, why would they tell us about this ahead of time?
Well, I don't know who's in the know and who's not, but people do give direction about these things. And it's the way of the occult operations and the Illuminati and the Masons and all the secret societies to announce in advance what's going on. It's like part of the rules of engagement. Maybe it's written down somewhere. I don't know, but it always seems to be. This is how it works.
What's your take on the podium, the choices of the colors overall? And this is applicable to the costumes as well, that you talked about, the purple, the royal purple.
I think that's a really important connection to note, because it's generally called royal purple, but behind that color is actually a sodomy signaling, which introduces the sex magic aspect. If you're familiar with Aleister Crowley and all that he was involved with, this is not an uncommon thing. This is actually a thread that goes back to the Canaanites and beyond. And you're familiar with Sodom and Gomorrah?
Sure am, yeah.
So the purple color is a sodomite signal. And given that it's a royal color, it's actually giving us an indication about the nature of what goes on with the royals. And a lot of people would be offended by that, but, well, the truth is the truth, and it's not very well hidden if you research it out. There's been a lot of people exposing some of these connections that the royals have. And I don't like to offend people, but I don't like to withhold the truth either.
Bob, do you think that there is any kind of benefit for anybody in this? And I guess we could stay focused on the royal family in this case. Do they attain something from this, get something from it? Are we talking about energy or something else?
Absolutely. The Olympics are about worshiping Zeus. They make no claim otherwise. And Zeus as a god, like most other gods, requires sacrifice, human sacrifice. It's always been that way. And so that the Zeus worshipping IOC, the Olympic Committee, would have some kind of ritual sacrifice being signaled in connection with the royals. It only makes sense. What they get out of it is part of the worship. They don't do that and nothing happens. They worship and they get something back out of it. And so Zeus gets something out of it, and those who worship him get something out of it, and that's why they do what they do. That's why they do the death ritual sacrifice, and that's why they do the sodomy. It goes hand in hand.
The Zeus connection is quite interesting, and if you have something else you can mention about that, I would love to hear it. Obviously, we have the Grecian, the Olympiad, the whole concept of that comes from ancient Greece. Even to this day, the torch that comes to the country that hosts the Olympics is lit in Olympia by the sunlight in the special bowl, of course. We have that connection there. What's some of the other connections to the Greek pantheon and Zeus specifically?
Well, the torch is a really big one. And you can't really discount just how important that is to them. The hymn that they sing when they do their rituals, this is also dedicated to Zeus and Apollo. the prayer that's prayed in the temple of Hera when they light the flame. There's a dedication there for Zeus. And although they don't talk about it much, Pierre de Coubertin, who is the founder of Olympism in the modern era, he was very adamant that Olympism was a religion, that Olympism was to bring forth the worship of Zeus through a restoration of the games and the arts. And through the arts and the games, this would honor Zeus, and it would bring all nations together, thronging together under the roseate hue. And this was the most important thing to Pierre de Coubertin, who's still honored to this day. Well, we have a historical precedent if we look back to 1936 and what went on with the Nazi Olympics. There's a very, very close parallel there, and you can't really separate the two. So I think if we look back and see where that went, we get a pretty good sense of where it's going on this round, which sounds kind of strange, except for there's all kinds of signals that really cement those two together. The big focus on the big bell for the opening. The Nazis had a big focus on a big bell for their opening. And certainly that's the plan for the 2012 London Olympics. All these parallels, they kind of go hand in hand. The military in 1936 was really ramping up. It was a very oppressive regime, and they were bound up with the Olympics like nobody's business, just like the UK is right now. Nothing good's going to come of that. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Tell us a bit about the Aeon of Horus and how that plays into maybe the opening ceremony itself, but also the Olympics overall.
Well, Crowley had what he called the Aeon of Osiris, followed by the Aeon of Isis, and then that was followed by the Aeon of Horus, and he intended to bring in introducing the Aeon of Horus. And Horus in the Greek is Apollo. This is what the Olympic and Olympism is all about. And with the voyage and quite a few other of these events that are taking place in the Culture Olympiad and the London 2012 Festival, they're celebrating this theme that revolves around the Aeon of Horus, which is a reintroduction of the ancient sun god. All the other religions have their sun god, and they all really kind of merge into one when you consider all the common themes. And this reintroduction of Horus appears to be the central theme of everything that I see in the Olympics. All the things that they're signaling has a basis in that. Even the Tempest, which is the main theme of the opening ceremony and actually of all this preparation. Because in the Tempest, by Shakespeare or Bacon as a ghostwriter, as many believe, Caliban, whose name is an anagram for cannibal, was a monster who was actually the son of the devil and an evil witch. So he's basically an Apollo figure. He's a Horus figure. So the Aeon of Horus, in a sense, is the Aeon of Caliban. And this just really matches up with all the other themes that are being promoted surrounding the Olympic celebration in this season. They celebrate what's called All the Giants, and it goes back from the ancient times of the giants who were in the land. And the giants were the children of the sons of God and the daughters of men from Genesis 6 in the Bible. The giants were typically, if you go back to the land of Canaan, you can see they were involved with ritual sacrifice, human sacrifice, cannibalism. And there's the name cannibal or Caliban. The themes of these ritual sacrifices are just woven in throughout. So the age of Horus, or the Aeon of Horus, is something that people have really got a hold of. It's not just, Aleister Crowley, some obscure guy making some kind of ridiculous claim. This is a reality that seems to be really breaking out in our present.
You talk about dimensional talk, that this is about opening a dimension, tapping into something else, or opening our world to another world. What are some of the themes surrounding this that you've found, Bob?
Well, that's a really fascinating thing, and it's a little bit complex to introduce it, but probably most simply, the bell is a common item for witches, and it's one of a small number of objects that may be used as magical weapons, according to Aleister Crowley. And they've got the bell in the stadium. And in the Bible, the bell is featured one day of the year when the high priest would go into the temple in Zion. And this is part of a connecting dot with the Zion Olympics of the logo. And so in the temple in Zion, on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go in and he would perform a ceremony in the Holy of Holies. It was the only time of the year he could go in. He had to be ritually pure. He was the only person who could go in. And he had to have bells on. And on the hem of his garment, he had a bell, pomegranate bell, and then they just alternated all the way around on the fringe. And it was the sound of the bell that's in the Bible said to enable him to go into the presence of God in the Holy of Holies and not die. And so the ringing of the bell is a trans-dimensional signal at the least. It's associated with this dimensional access between the Most High God and his priest. So this is kind of a special thing. When you think of the bell, think of some kind of genuine trans-dimensional facilitation device. It's a portal actuator, and it's legitimate according to the biblical usage, and it appears that this feature has been leveraged for a really long time. And it's this bell that really is at the heart of the dimensional situation. But as far as a physical object goes, there's that. But as far as other indicators suggesting that there's some kind of a interdimensional quantum entanglement situation that's being involved with this ritual, it points directly to the Olympic Park, and it binds 2012 with 1948, which is very, very fascinating. And the evidence that suggests that there's really something to this that's legitimate is fairly substantial. It's a little bit deep to go in and, a 2-minute fly over the forest overview. I get into it on my blog pretty deeply, but it deals with a couple of principles that can be documented. One is that a line drawn from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a certain number of statute miles that equates exactly with the period of Jerusalem and the establishment of the State of Israel between 1948 and 1949. When you take that period of time, convert it into statute miles, extend the line from the Temple Mount, it passes and brackets the Olympic Park exactly. So there's an association there that says the establishment of Zion, and it plants right on the Olympic Park. And given all the things that Rick Clay brought out about the names of the streets and some of the history of that area, that's real interesting. The other primary principle involved with this connection points to Psalm 48 and what's said in Psalm 48. There's a link. Psalms is the 19th book of the Bible, and in the 48th division, it pictures the events of 1948 very accurately. It's a principle that was pretty well documented by the late J.R. Church, and fabulous principle. And I've seen quite a number of instances that really validate that, just like the other principle I mentioned, which was popularized and discovered really by another gentleman who passed away this last year. And this Psalm 48 thing, it's just mind-blowing when you think about extending it and bringing it forward as a quantum entanglement into 2012, because it paints a picture that a lot of people have suggested about the Olympics as a season of false flag event activity. So this quantum entanglement, it's a little bit esoteric in seeing this connection. If you really take the time, do your homework, and investigate it, there's a legitimacy there that can't really be denied. If we kind of take a step back and ask why, what is this about? And we really have to at some point. I believe that one of the other signals really puts the right spin on this. We talked a little bit about 9/11 earlier, and the event of 9/11/2001 with the Trade Center changed the world. It was a transformative event. And given that it's a false flag event, the intent was to bring some change, to bring a transformation, and it has to have some catalyst. And I believe from that perspective, whatever is going to be going down at the Olympics here, the fruit of it, whether there's an actual terrorist event or not, just because of the mega ritual involved, the Queen, the IOC, everybody who's putting their weight behind this thing is intending to bring forth another 9/11, another transformative event, another catalyst to transition the people of the world from its current state into another in preparation for a global dominant regime. And I think that's the big picture. Biblically, it's to bring in the Antichrist, which, Prince William, a lot of people point to him, people point to other people. Regardless of who it is, the world that's going to receive the Antichrist is going to have a transformation. It's not this world that we're used to now. When you look back, the world that was before 9/11, 2001, was a different world. What's happened since then is that terrorism has been the pretext to strip away any guise of individual freedom and to bring the people of the world into a servitude. But that wasn't enough. There's going to need to be another transition. I've seen it signaled as a combination of numbers 9/12. We see 9/11s that people have called out, 11/11s and 9/11s signaled all over the place. There's been a series of signalings of 9/12, and what 9/12 speaks to me of is the season after 9/11, the minute after 9/11. It's the season that the catalyst was brought to bring. And I believe everything I see going on with the Olympics says that there is going to be another 9/11, and the point is to bring the 9/12, which is then the world in which the Antichrist will be able to manifest in the world, to be brought forth, and for his rule to be set up as a counterfeit Messiah.
Do you think that it's going to happen during the actual opening ceremony, when potentially we have the most eyes on the screens out there and attendees and spectators and everything else, or do you think it's going to happen during the games? Otherwise, that would, if it's something that happens during the opening ceremony, it's almost like, and if it's big enough, it would even question if they would go ahead with the whole games after that, right?
Well, I see one indication that tells me it won't happen really till it's done, till it's run its full course. And it has to do with the bell, book, and candle ritual. The bell, book, and candle ritual is based on an old Catholic excommunication ritual. It involves a bell, a book, and a candle. And I'll quote here. It says, in describing that, after reciting this, the priest would respond, "So be it." The bishop would ring a bell to evoke a death toll, close a holy book to symbolize the excommunicant's separation from the church, and snuff out a candle or candles, knocking them to the floor to represent the target's soul being extinguished and removed from the light of God. Now, the bell, book, and candle is an important spell in witchcraft, too. It's a curse. In the Catholic Church, they used to have 13 people involved, which you'll recognize as a coven, and this is a witchcraft spell. And I believe this mega ritual involves the bell, book, and candle, which would suggest to me that they're going to go through with the whole Olympics. They intend to wrap it up. At the end, what they do is, they've rung the bell. They're going to close the book, which the book is really the book of life. It's the human scroll, double helix scroll written in the genetic script, right? A, C, G, and T nucleotide bases. So humanity is really the book, and the range of engagement that's taken place during the Olympics with the full range of human life from across the nations and all peoples, right? They've rolled everybody up into that book of life, and so they're going to bring the Olympics to a close at the closing ceremony. They're going to ring the bell, they're going to close the book, and then they're going to snuff out the candle, which is the Olympic flame at the cauldron. So it's a huge mega ritual, bell book and candle. Yeah, very ominous. The 30th Olympiad, the XXX is right off the bat a warning indicator of a hazard or poison. It's a danger signal. And the music that they're going to play for the opening ceremony is the responsibility of Underworld, which is the place of the dead. So if they're going to have a death ritual, that's pretty fitting. There's another death ritual signaled through the number 27, and so many items of the Olympics have been stamped with the number 27. One in particular I have to mention is the starting date, July 27, which there's a SRA, a Satanic Ritual Abuse calendar, and this is called the Grand Climax. And as part of this, a human female is sacrificed, and there's gross sexual abuse along with it. So this will be happening around the world wherever people want to do that, and it'll support this July 27 mega ritual at the Olympics in London. And the 27, you can't really get away from the Club 27 meme, which is a mysterious death observation of famous musicians, such as recently Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Brian Jones, Robert Johnson. They all died at the age of 27. So there's that meme out there, and they are stamping this 27 all over the place. There's $27 million spent for the opening ceremony. The bell was originally stated to be 27 tons. So there's that death ritual. It turns out it's 23 now. Still the largest ringing bell in the world, they say, but the 23 is a DNA number. It's a genetic number, which with death and life, which is the transformation I believe they're really going for, that 23 is a real important signal number. The tickets of the game went on sale on 3/22/2010. Now the number 322 appears on the symbol for the Skull and Bones Society, right? It's a famous connection that people make. And it's very interesting that the Georgia Guidestones, which a lot of people know about, were dedicated with the erection of the center cluster on 3/22 in 1980. And mass death is forecasted there with the first guideline giving a target global population figure at under 500 million, which is about 1/14 of today's number. So that demands a significant reduction to hit their target. And the Georgia Guidestones, 3/22/1980, is exactly 30 years prior to when the tickets for the games went on sale, 3/22/2010. So that's 30 years to the 30th Olympiad, which is another ominous observation.
I brought this out in an article a while back now about Tish B'Av. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. This is obviously the day that we had the destruction of the temple of Solomon, right? And yes. Some people have claimed, and I found different sources for this, and hence, some people criticized me when I put this article together because they said, no, it's wrong. It's not on the 27th of July. It's actually at sunset on the 28th, so about 24 hours after that. One of the sources I've found, which is on about.com on their Judaism section, there it claims that it's actually on July 22nd to July 28th. So, it varies a little bit. We're talking about a time span of about 24 hours there. I still believe and think that it's quite significant that that there is a correlation here to the dates. If you're aware of this, what's your comment on this?
That did come to my attention, and I invested a good bit of time to determine, when is the date and what's the significance of it, if it is or isn't. And I think it is important that it comes during that time, because especially they're focused on the temple. Everything that they're doing relates to a temple in, related to Zion, created in London. And because of the association of the temple on the 9th of Av, this really can't be dismissed. If it's even one day out, if it's on the second day, it's right in the target zone. So the precision, I think, doesn't really matter so much. If they're going to have a death ritual and destroy the temple, if it doesn't come on opening day, the second day, being the 9th of Av, would certainly seem like an appropriate target. I don't think they're going to have a mass event that'll kill a lot of people right there on that day. I think it's more likely that the whole season will pass because of the importance of that whole death ritual and the bell book and candle, playing that whole thing out. I think that magically is going to be more significant in regards to bringing forth their plans than just killing a bunch of people right up front. So that's my take on it.
My name is Chad Stemke. I like to consider myself an esoteric researcher, and my website is www.chadstemke.com. Currently, my research really consists of, I look at ancient sacred landscapes, and I've been trying to decipher some of the symbolism that's incorporated in not only the landscape itself, but some of the relics that have been left behind. And I like to take that information and visit the neighboring cities, sometimes parks that have been built atop these sacred landscapes. And what we're discovering is in these cities, many times there's what I like to refer to as cosmic parks or urban portals. My friend and colleague, William Henry, he likes to refer to them as Stargate parks. But when you go to these cosmic parks, there's just incredible gateway, Stargate, ancient Egyptian, just all this cosmic symbolism. And after doing a lot of research on it, what you realize is a lot of this symbolism may be emanating from the cosmos, even being subconsciously downloaded into the artists and architects. So over the years, I've been watching these urban portals and cosmic parks being brought into fruition, in particular, special places and special times. So as I've been watching this 2012 Olympic Park being built, and coincidingly doing the research, it didn't take long to realize that a lot of this symbolism is the same things we've been looking at previously. They're literally bringing into fruition a cosmic park. And we'll get into this a little bit in a minute, but I think in a way this may be some sort of a symbolic disclosure that's emanating from the cosmos.
So you're saying that they've built the Olympic Park with these things in mind, or again, is this... There's many different people involved in such a huge project like this. But where do you feel that where's the inspiration coming from for this stuff?
Well, of course, my aspect or perspective is from looking at the symbolism at this. And of course, there's a lot of intentional symbolism going on down here. And a lot of it's even backing up in a way a lot of the conspiracy theories that have been swirling around, in particular the Zion and New Jerusalem. And we can get into that in a minute. But there's also a lot of symbolism, in particular the rainbow symbolism, the gateway symbolism, that I believe isn't necessarily intentional symbolism, or the Illuminati, so to speak, isn't behind it. And I think some of this is actually emanating from our cosmos, and these artists and architects who are tuned in, so to speak, maybe picking up on this. And they're putting this symbolism right into the designs of not only the parks, but the mascots and what have you.
The mascots are very interesting, and as far as I know, you've talked a bit about this in the past. You've done some articles, write-ups about this, Mandeville and Wenlock. What's your take on this? When they were first announced, there was a big hoopla, and people didn't, some people went over and just like, what the hell is this? What's going on? These are two one-eyed kind of monster-looking creatures surfing in on a rainbow over, the London Olympics Park. What's your take on this?
Well, yeah, like you said, they're just really weird-looking little rainbow guys. I call them the one-eyed rainbow-riding alien guys, and their name's Wenlock and Mandeville. And, well, when I'm talking about subconscious symbolism emerging, these guys are a really good example of it. Now, the company who created Wenlock and Mandeville, the one-eyed rainbow riders, is actually entitled Iris. And when we're talk about iris, we can think of the colored part of our eye, but also symbolically the rainbow goddess Iris. And, well, my friend William Henry's pointed out that in the center of our galaxy, there may be another scion, and he did the literary research and the art research, and says there may be a group of rainbow beings, ascended just humans, that occupy the center of our galaxy. And the symbol they use is the rainbow. So what I like to point out with Wenlock and Mandeville here, the two mascots, if there was a group of light beings or rainbow beings out there in the cosmos, possibly in our galactic center, and they wanted to send this information down to us Earthlings, those of us who would recognize it, what a better company to pick than Iris, the rainbow goddess. And even to Egyptians, Iris actually was equivalent to Isis, which was to them symbolic of the center of the galaxy. So, I mean, this company in itself can be symbolic of the center of the galaxy. They're symbolic of the rainbow goddess. And, if you want to confirm your suspicions about this, I just came up with this the other day. So I went to Iris's website, and when you get there, the first thing you see in the upper right-hand corner, and this is a computer term, but symbolically speaking, it says the Iris portal. So we can think of a rainbow portal. And then when you click on the mascots page, you get there and this little blue alien with an elongated skull pops up holding a sign saying, "Welcome to the Iris Nation," or the Rainbow Nation. So, to me, this is just one of those things that there's so many coincidences and synchronicities that line up. At some point, you start to wonder, could these little guys be a message? Could there be a group of beings who are implanting the symbolism down here? And actually, they're creating around Olympic Park and around London, they're going to have 84 one-ton sculptures of these giant one-eyed rainbow riders placed around town. I mean, just huge, huge sculptures. And of course, the first thing I thought about when, I heard the number, there's going to be 84 of these giant aliens, it kind of, to me, it reminded me of the 84 Olympics. And once again, you had aliens having something to do with the opening ceremonies. So there's a lot of unconscious symbolism. And I want to point out that I know a lot of us have been, kind of trying to decipher the Roman numerals, the triple X's. And I was staring at them the other day, just staring at them. And I was thinking, we really want something that correlates to these Olympics. You come up with a million different, symbolic things for triple X's. But so I was sitting there, I just wrote the 3 X's down on paper. And of course, the Roman numeral X represents 10. This is the 30th Olympics. And when you write the 3 X's out and you just write 10, 10, 10 above the X's, the first thing I noticed is, it kind of looked like a binary code, 101010. So I put that in Google, and what pops up is this is the binary code for the number 42. Well, 42 is the number that's symbolic for the rainbow. Light reflects at 42 degrees to create a rainbow. And if anyone's ever seen the movie The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the number 42, they say is the answer to the ultimate questions of life, the answers to the universe, and everything. So that's one of those things. This is one of those symbols that can't be manipulated. There's no way anybody can manipulate the Roman numerals for this year's Olympics, but yet we can symbolically pull out the symbol for the rainbow. So to me, this is like some kind of universal symbolism taking place.
I want to ask you just quickly here about the UFO disclosure bit here, because some people, they speculate that there might be some kind of, going back to the 1984 Olympics, as you said, with either literally a spaceship landing coming down, and this could be a so-called, false flag UFO disclosure event, meaning it's not the real deal, it's actually humans behind it. It could also be the real deal, potentially, that would happen. Now, have you any thoughts on this at all? Do you think that they would actually do something during the event or the opening ceremony that would have anything to do with this when it comes to UFO and official disclosure?
Well, I mean, normally I would say no, but considering the symbolism that has shown up in the previous opening ceremonies, I got to say, you know, anything's a possibility. Anything's possible. And, you know, both aliens and giants have made appearances in the opening ceremonies over the last couple of decades. And it kind of started, like we just said, in 1984 in Los Angeles. They lowered, or actually it was a jet-propelled UFO, down into the stadium during closing ceremonies, and a 7-foot 8-inch giant, as the announcer said, dressed in an alien suit, got out and, you know, talked to the crowd, said he saluted the crowd and he was proud of the Olympic ideals. So that was the first time. But then, see, in 2000 in Sydney, Australia, same kind of scenario. When they were lighting the torch lighting took place in what appeared to be a water portal, and then they raised this water portal and it transcended into what looked like a UFO. And then they started the opening ceremonies, and sure enough, under this portal / UFO cauldron, they march out this giant piece of cave art, and it was the cave art from Australia was a giant alien head. So these things keep showing up. And even a lot of us are forgetting about the Winter Olympics in Vancouver just a couple years ago, 2010. David Atkins, he produced the opening ceremonies. And what they did is they raised 4 luminous giants. I mean, just monstrous. They had to be 100 feet tall within this medicine wheel. And then they had a shaman come out within the center of this medicine wheel and bang his rod a couple times. And it opened up into this rainbow portal, which the rest of the participants transcended through. So, I mean, you got all this alien and giant symbolism taking place. So I think, like you said, it's possible. Could there be a false flag? Possibly. If they do, I got to say they're going to have to use some pretty incredible technology, but that technology probably is out there. And like you said, others say, could there be a possible real ET presence? I mean, what a better place and time. Or like I mentioned earlier, if neither one of those come into fruition, could it be a symbolic disclosure that a group of beings from our galactic center are saying, here we are, here's all the symbolism, you just got to recognize it first thing. So any of those are possible. I mean, let's look at Werner von Braun. He actually mentioned a possibility on his deathbed that an alien invasion false flag could happen, so the powers that be could, possibly weaponize space or whatnot.
It's very interesting. There seem to be 2 different currents here kind of running throughout the march up to the openings here on the 27th of July, 2012. And one is this kind of message, if you will, that this is a message of something extraordinary happening. And then at the same time, right next to that, you have a fearful, if you will, approach as well, which I completely understand, that this might be a perfect opportunity or time for terrorists to strike. We could also be looking at false flag terrorism, that someone is wishing us to see the backside of all of this, and they're going to take the opportunity to produce something that is not the truth, but are going to blame it on whoever they want to blame it on, because it's beneficial to the New World Order and to the way they advance things here.
Right.
I mean, and we've seen, by the way, as well, Chad, we've seen the lockdown of London during these games now. The militarization is just incredible, and I could imagine it would be just very difficult to travel even in London at this time, and the security is going to be probably to the point of being horrendous. So how real is that to you, that we could see something more, well, I hate to say mundane, but in comparison to the UFO possibilities during the event, which is more extraordinary, of course, but regular terrorism or false flag, how important and how much is that of a reality, do you think?
Well, it's very reality. I mean, like you said, as far as that goes, it's one of the biggest events in our time, going to be viewed by possibly billions of people. There's no question that it's a possibility. No question about it. And I think a lot of attention and a lot of energy is really being focused around this fear factor. And that could be a possibility. That is part of what these people are trying to do, possibly the Illuminati. Maybe they just want to get this fear out of everybody, and it's understandable. A lot of, it's scary if there could be a bombing or whatnot. That said, that's why I like to try and focus some of our attention and some of our intention on more of the positive. Like I heard David Icke say on your show before, attention goes where energy flows. And there could be some bad stuff happening, but I really think we need to focus our intention and energy on the positive if possible, in hopes that it could make a difference. And my hopes are possibly, I truly feel this is a symbolic disclosure. If it is, could these beings from our galactic center recognize actually what's going on down here? And if so, could there be some type of intervention or not? I mean, it's all speculation, but, who knows?
Who knows, indeed. Now, Danny Boyle, the movie director, is in charge of the £27 million opening ceremony, and there's been some interesting stuff coming out about that as well. And so, some clues so far. I mean, it's been largely secretive, but I think we have a pretty good grasp of what's going to happen now. What about some of these things that you've spotted or maybe looked into? Do you find interesting specifically about this?
Well, he's basing his opening ceremony, he's calling it Green and Pleasant, line straight out of William Blake's Jerusalem poem. And I gotta say, this is where Rick Clay, 4 years ago, I mean, he nailed this on the head when he was connecting the Zion logo with this, with this poem. It's almost incomprehensible that Danny Boyle would then, 4 years later, actually base his opening ceremonies on it. And Boyle knows about this. He even said in one interview, this is in part a nod to the conspiracy theorist. So it's not that he didn't. Yeah, so it's not that he didn't know about this, know. Now, the focal point is, of course, it's going to be Glastonbury Tor, topped by a cosmic hawthorn tree. There's also going to be below maypoles and some fluffy clouds floating about. And what I like to point out about the hawthorn tree is symbolically, this is a cosmic connection point. Ancient trees on top of sacred mounds were cosmic connection points where the branches reached for the heavens, the roots reached for the underworld. And even in Judaic tradition, the burning bush through which Moses spoke to God, it was the hawthorn bush. So there's a cosmic connection with this bush that actually is going to sit on top of Glastonbury Tor. And Glastonbury Tor in itself, that's sometimes considered a gateway to other worlds. One thing I like to point out right now is the myth of Joseph of Arimathea and Jesus coming to Glastonbury. And the reason I point that out is because this whole ceremony on July 27th takes place on the same day that legend has it Joseph of Arimathea passed away at Glastonbury. July 27th, 82 AD, supposedly. This whole thing, this symbolism in some way, it's revolving around Joseph of Arimathea in a way. Another thing that I haven't heard anybody talk much about yet are these little out-of-place fluffy clouds that Boyle has floating around Glastonbury Tor there. And considering that a lot of this, the set and the scene is coming from William Blake's poem, I thought we should look back one paragraph before the Green and Pleasant paragraph. And what it says is, "Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold, bring me my chariot of fire." So I think considering the religious aspect of these opening ceremonies, if we look in the Bible, well, chariots of fire are usually transportation vehicles between the heavens and the earth. Of course, Elijah went up in a whirlwind with a chariot of fire. In Exodus, the glory of the Lord, he appeared in a cloud. Sometimes the clouds are even the actual chariots. There's actually over 70 reference of cloud vehicles in the Bible. And in Revelations, I know we've talked about, or you and Rick talked a lot about the number 1111. So I looked up Revelations 11:11, and it said that after these days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them. They stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them that saw them. They heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, "Come up hither." And they ascended up into heaven in a cloud. So I think these clouds may be more symbolic than, they're getting credit for. They may be symbolic of literally the chariots of fires, the transportation vehicles between heaven and earth.
Wow, how about that? Now, I want to touch a little bit more on this aspect of Jerusalem, or, the poem that you mentioned, and the concept of the New Jerusalem. We have Zion depicted in the logo, veiled in a sense. There is a Jesus connection with Glastonbury. There's also a connection to, Solomon's temple in all this as well. And then, of course, in the side of this, we have the the whole royal family that, at least in some circles, kind of claim heritage with the line of David and whatnot. Prince William is kind of seen as the, I guess, representative, the potential, I don't know, next kind of messiah figure. There's a lot of, stuff about this in there that kind of connects in a subtle way. But to you, Chad, is this simply a biblical connections? Is this a play on the fact that they try to, I don't know, create a new version of Christianity and a new religion almost of sorts, or how should we interpret this, do you think?
Well, that is definitely very possible, considering Danny Boyle's basing his opening ceremony around this, and he's knowing of this conspiracy theory. It makes, what's he doing? Is somebody paying him off? Does he just think it feels right? So the question is this intentional, or is this some unconscious? And this is the one thing, I think it could go either way, and we might not know until after the ceremonies. But as far as possibly being intentional, if you go to Wolf & Owens, the designer of the logo's website, it says on their website, on the front page, that this is a recognizable and universal form, and it was deliberately spirited. And then if you dig a little deeper, Wally Owens, the actual one of the founders of this company, he actually mentions in an religious world, brands provide us with beliefs. They define who we are, and they signal our affiliations. So I think that says a lot as far as intentional symbolism goes. And of course, I'm sure listeners know this ain't the first time the idea of a New Jerusalem in London has taken place. Of course, back after the fire of 1666, the Great Fire of London, Sir Christopher Wren, he was one of the most highly acclaimed architects at the time, and he rebuilt 51 of the churches. But on September 11th, 3 days following the fire, he shows up at King Charles II with a new plan of the city, hoping to basically form a New Jerusalem out of London, and of all days on September 11th. So this plan seems to have been in the works. But what I say is, if this all comes and this all goes and we don't see these groups trying to actually fulfill this new Zion or this new Jerusalem, in that case, can we look at the cosmic Zion that William Henry has pointed out could be our galactic center? And could this also be subconscious, something else to add into the Wenlock and Mandeville, to add into the rainbow triple X's? And we didn't get into it today, but there's rainbow installations all over town, like no other time before. So that's the one symbol I'm still, kind of questionable about. And I want to watch the opening ceremonies to see what takes place to kind of decipher that. And I'd like to point out to everybody, when you're watching these opening ceremonies this year, do so with an open mind and using your intuition, because it may be one of the only ways we're going to be able to decipher, some of these cosmic game pieces that are being put into place. We're going to have to use our open mind and really our intuition to sort out what's going on, I think.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the subconscious element here, or where the inspiration comes from, do you think? Because as you said here, if this is about deciphering this, to me, that what that also means is there could be clues in there that maybe those who have put all of this together don't even know about themselves. This, to me, has always been, well, when you have a mass of people, watching something like this in the billions, perhaps, then, well, in a subtle kind of way, the universe finds an opportunity here to get some stuff out. It's almost like it knows in advance that, okay, this is going to be watched. A lot of people are going to be tuning in. So this is a great time to communicate, maybe in the most simple and most effective way that there is, which is usually through symbolic acts, symbolism. So again, maybe you could touch upon that a little bit more, where this is coming from. And again, if the majority of people arranging this and helping to put all of this together, do they connect with something else when they put all this stuff together? Do they tap into the muse, if you will? Chad, what's your take on this?
Well, I do believe that is what happens on certain occasions. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I like to use one example of an artist that came down to a sacred landscape in Detroit, where a lot of my research is. And what happens is they come to these ancient sacred landscapes, and when they're doing their plans for the park or whatever they're doing, it seems like they're getting this cosmic information, sometimes not even realizing it. And the reason I point out the guy, his name is Osamu Noguchi, who did Stargate Detroit, is what this guy did is this is in the mid-'70s. He created a park and he aligned the monuments, a pyramid, a horse and sun fountain, and an obelisk, to align to the Giza pyramids. But not only that, these same monuments also aligned to the constellation of Orion. Now, the thing is, like I said, this is in the 70s. Robert Bruval's constellation Orion theory wasn't out there yet. And Noguchi put this same symbolism right into a park that was located on an ancient landscape. Now, the same guy back in 1947 had another similar experience where he created a monument. It was going to be called the Face to be Seen from Mars. Giant face, mile long, half mile wide, only visible from Mars. And what the artist said, in case we destroyed ourselves in a nuclear holocaust, aliens would recognize we occupied Earth. Well, then, of course, 30 years later, NASA sends back images from a face on Mars. And you put them together, and they're absolutely identical. And I've seen the same type thing keep happening over and over, that these artists are getting this information, and it'll come out to be true decades later. And that's kind of what I see happening here in London with these artists, Anish Kapoor and all these guys creating this incredible gateway symbolism. Anish Kapoor says the tower outside of the stadium, symbolic of a Tower of Babel, a gateway to the gods. He says he wants the tower to reach the gods. It's a Tower of Babel that says, "Come and join me." And he hopes to manipulate the viewer's space and time. So it's like these guys are coming up with this cosmic symbolism, and I think we're all having the opportunity to go and take advantage of it.
That could potentially mean as well then, Chad, that whatever the fruits of this intention that is set at these games during the opening ceremony and everything else is not something that would manifest itself right away or play out right away. This could be something that you alluded to with the face on Mars correlation there, and the face on Earth to be seen from Mars. That it could take time, a delay almost, if you will. We could see the fruits or the intentions of this to come in to our reality maybe 10, 20 years from now, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But that being said, I feel like time in itself may be speeding up, where before, like, I'm deciphering this park from the 70s just a couple years ago, but now it's like we're kind of catching up. And in this case, this is the first case where we really watched the park being brought into fruition, so we could actually recognize some of the symbolism as it's actually being built, you know? So I feel like that aspect of it may be speeding up, and in this case, we may be able to recognize some of the symbolism sooner than later, hopefully. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories swirling around, and some of them, you know, they might be just, but I just like people to also pay attention to some of the positive symbolism. I hate to see all this positive and cosmic symbolism go overshadowed due to some of the conspiracy theories. So I just want people to recognize and maybe avert some of their attention and intention to the positive. And like I said, just watch these Olympics with an open mind. And we'll probably really need to have these discussions after the Olympics to try and figure out what happened.
To complete our Olympics special, we are going to go back into our archive, and we'll leave you with David Icke, followed by Ian Crane, and then lastly, we'll return to Rick Clay again. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned to Red Ice Radio.
You know, as my friends and family will confirm, when I heard that London was going for the 2012 Olympics, I said to them, they're going to get it. They're bound to get it. 2012, whatever we think about it, it's a focus year because of all the stuff surrounding it. And London were too obvious bedfellows for London not to get the Olympics. Because, of course, you know, anyone who does any research into this, the Olympic Committee and all that stuff is controlled by the bloodlines. They decide where the things go in. The rest is just farce. And so then you have, of course, the Zion kind of symbol of the Olympics, that the London Olympics, which you can see on the internet, and of course the mascots of the London Olympics are kind of entities with a single eye. So, they're not trying to hide it here. And of course, the one of the great symbols of the bloodlines and the conspiracy over thousands of years has been the lighted torch or the flame. This is where we get the eternal flame from and all the rest of it. And of course, the most blatant and obvious symbol of the Olympics is the lighted torch. And what do? They light the fire, and the flame goes throughout the games. And there is a synchronicity of all this and London in 2012 that means that it is very, very important to them. Now, of course, without inside knowledge, you can't say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But let's just not forget what we've been talking about, Henrik, and that is the way that energy flows where attention goes and how energy is trawled in the ways we've discussed. Now, billions and billions of people worldwide during the London Games are going to be focused on London and because of the Games. Energy flows where attention goes. And that is, for me, whatever else happens, and I've no doubt I've other things planned too, that is for me the foundation of it all. Because in the end, it's all about energy. It's all about manipulation of energy, manipulating information fields so that you subconsciously, subliminally manipulate people's perception of reality. So in the end, like I say, when we see something happen in the so-called physical realm, it's just like a movie hitting the screen. It's a done deal. That's it. But the real deal and the real manipulation, the real encoding of that which plays out in our conscious mind reality is happening at deeper levels. And this is what we've got to understand, that we're not going to change anything in the physical world. We need to find out where it's coming from and change it there, and we can. We're gonna find that, and we're going to find a way of changing that projection. We absolutely are.
Now the laser show. Side of the peristyle as we look at it.
London is not already the most surveilled capital on the planet, but of course what's coming up in the next few weeks with the Olympics is just unbelievable. We're looking at an area of the city of London literally becoming the most securitized place on the planet, with the possible exception of the West Bank or Gaza. It is absolutely horrendous. We're looking at a situation where we've got helicopter carriers in the River Thames. We've got anti-aircraft missiles being placed on the roofs of apartment blocks around the Olympic area. And by the way, the residents of these apartment blocks had a flyer put through their letterbox, which basically told them that there was going to be this anti-aircraft missile battery placed on their roof. I guess they had to they'd tell them because, otherwise they might have spotted it. Anyway, one of the residents, understandably, was a bit shaken by this, and so he went to the press and said, look, this is outrageous. I didn't move into this apartment block on the basis that it was going to be the base of an anti-aircraft missile. Anyway, because he went to the press, he's now been served with an eviction notice.
Oh, God. That's
So,
pathetic.
what we are seeing the UK accelerate its metamorphosis into a police state. Now, what is very, very interesting is that many people within the police are actually starting to wake up to what's occurring here. And this was actually seen in the last few days when there was a massive police protest in London. Hardly any coverage in the mainstream media. But the British government is doing its best to try and encourage long-serving police officers who joined up for all the right reasons. It's trying to encourage them to leave, to take early retirement. And what they're being replaced with is basically thugs. You know, I mean, when I lived in France, I can remember that one of the jokes about the CRS, of course, is the French riot police. And one of the jokes in France about the CRS was that if you applied to join the CRS, when you were given the application form, if you spelt your name right, you were way overqualified.
Great.
And this is basically what is starting to occur, you know, in the UK and I'm told elsewhere. You know, we are literally seeing the privatization of policing. So, you know, what we are ending up with is the equivalent of nightclub bouncers, you know, policing the streets.
Yeah. They love to beat people up and
Well, carrying tasers.
Yeah.
You know, we've already had situations in the UK where a guy with Alzheimer's was tasered because he refused to take his medication. I mean, this was in Scunthorpe. I mean, it wasn't even in London. You know, but I mean, what we're seeing here, what we're seeing here is a situation that is unfolding that it's normalizing these outrageous excesses. And people are just sort of choosing to say, well, you know, it didn't happen to me, so therefore I'll ignore it.
Yeah.
You know, what are they going to do? They're going to wait till it does happen to them or to someone close to them before they go, oh my God. I mean, you know, this is what is so outrageous. I mean, the London Olympics are, in my opinion, and I think we might have discussed this once or twice before, Henrik, are going to be used as a platform to springboard the introduction of global governance. Now, it's 5 years since I put forward the hypothesis that they would go the whole hog and stage the fake alien invasion.
Right.
Whether it's a fake alien invasion or not, I don't know.
Do you want to recap that quickly for us? What's your scenario? What do you think will happen?
Well, the scenario that I was putting forward, and I put forward this scenario again in July of 2007, and the scenario was this, that the London Olympics, with the world's attention focused on London in July, late July, early August of 2012. And during the course of the Olympics, they would stage something so audacious that it would effectively get all nations around the world to subjugate themselves to a one world government. And of course, all the way through history, we know that this has been the wet dream of the globalists. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can actually trace one of the earliest references to the idea of staging a fake alien invasion back to 1917, when, you know, the think tank putting together what eventually became the League of Nations. And I believe the quote is attributed to John Dewey, but I may stand corrected on that. But during the course of the discussions, the observation was made that, you know, how easy it would be to establish a global government if there was some massive outside threat, like an alien invasion.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had the Halloween 1938 broadcast by Orson Welles, where he effectively read a rendition of War of the Worlds and had the whole of upstate New York in a state of absolute panic because they believed that it was a genuine news broadcast.
Yeah.
Then we have, roll the clock forward to the 1960s, where we have the report from Iron Mountain. And this is, of course, accessible on the web. Report from Iron Mountain on the possibility and desirability of peace. A think tank document that came into the public domain in 1967. Of course, it's dismissed as a forgery, whatever that might mean.
Right.
But one of the infamous quotes from that document, and it's page 51, ironically. Page 51 is also the same page as the reference to a new Pearl Harbor in the Rebuilding America's Defenses document from 2000. But page 51 of the report from Iron Mountain says, it has been hotly argued that the threat of war, i.e. aliens, threat of extraterrestrial war, would offer the last best hope of peace. by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures, inverted commas, from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think that test was, of course, a reference to Orson Welles' radio broadcast in 1938.
That's right.
It is possible that a few of the more difficult to explain flying saucer incidents of recent years were in fact experiments of this kind. Now remember, that quote that I've just shared with you is from the mid-1960s. Yep. It actually goes on to say that if they were to use a fake alien invasion, they would actually have to stage it. That wasn't to deny the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but just to acknowledge that they couldn't be relied upon to turn up on cue.
Right.
Then, of course, we have Reagan with all of his observations during the late 1980s when he was pumping for the Star Wars program.
In the UN, yeah, he was.
In the UN, yeah. Saying, I often wonder how quickly, our differences would be put aside if we were facing some massive external threat, blah, 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 blah. And that was obviously to justify whatever was going on in space at that time. Then we have, in 2001, we had Carol Rosin at the press conference in Washington, the Disclosure Conference, where she recited a conversation that she had had with Wernher von Braun back in 1974, where he told her that she needed to be vigilant and she needed to start spreading the word because the powers that be were intending to increase the threat, the potential of threat to humanity by going on about terrorism, asteroids, and then he said the last card will be the fake alien invasion. Well, a couple of years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, in May of 2010, the Rockefeller Foundation issued a report, a think tank report called The Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. Well, don't be put off by the title because it's yet another Rockefeller report having their wet dream of global governance. And I got to say, I love the opening paragraph because it says the Rockefeller Foundation supports work that expands opportunity and strengthens resilience to social, economic, health, and environmental challenges, affirming its pioneering philanthropic mission since 1913 to promote the well-being of humanity.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Give me a break. But anyway, in this report, as with many Rockefeller think tank reports, they use the fictional scenario to look at ways in which, or events which might unfold, which could give them an opportunity to accelerate the imposition of global governance. And in this particular report, what is so interesting about this report is a lot of these fictional scenarios, they generally written in future tense or at best in present tense. But now in this report, they're actually written in past tense. And there's two scenarios. One is a 2012 pandemic. In fact, they talk about a bird flu pandemic originating from wild geese.
Okay.
And it says, even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months. The majority of them healthy young adults. This is almost, if you've seen the film Contagion.
Yeah, sure.
This is almost like a sort of synopsis of the script of Contagion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even the movie that was laid out was like get ready for this one. It's a very strange movie, but yeah, go ahead, Ian.
And then one of the other scenarios they talk about is an event at the London Olympics killing 13,000 people.
Wow. Okay.
So then we look at the movies, and as we've just discussed, I mean, Hollywood or other movie producers, seem to have the remarkable ability to put out as a fictional script future events. And I've got to draw your attention to 3 films. The first one is, I mean, all the films are instantly forgettable in terms of movie classics. Mm-hmm. But one is District 9. Do you remember District 9?
Oh, yeah. That's I really like the one, actually. A lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of allegory about the black townships of Soweto in South Africa and all that.
Yep.
Anyway, you remember towards the end of the film, the lead alien is about to go back to the mother ship, thanks to being helped by the scientist who has morphed into a sort of part alien. He's become like a hybrid.
Right.
Well, the lead alien turns to him in the closing scene and says, thanks for your help. And then he says, I will come back for you, I promise, in 3 years. Mm-hmm. Well, I was told that the original release date of that film was August the 12th of 2009. Now, I think that if you look on Wikipedia, the date of the release of the film is actually given as August the 14th right now. Mm-hmm. But either way, it's close enough to August the 12th. Then we have Battle Los Angeles. And in the opening scene here, when the attack is launched upon Los Angeles, the date line at the bottom of the screen is August the 12th, 2011.
All right, yeah.
Then the third film is one that was released just barely a month ago, a little over a month ago, on the 4th of April, 2012. And this is an interesting date, of course, because 4/4/12 is the same in both the American date versions and the European date versions. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, 4/4 is 8. So once again, we've got 8/12, 12th of August.
So we're talking about the ending of the spectacle.
About the closing ceremony. Yeah. The last time a closing ceremony fell on the 12th of August was in Los Angeles.
1984, was it?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the closing ceremony supposedly had a UFO, which was apparently lowered down towards the Olympic Stadium on a cable from a helicopter. And then you had an alien in a sort of white Darth Vader type suit coming onto the stage and supposedly saying, we salute humanity for putting all your differences aside and putting on this sort of major spectacle, blah, blah, blah. So we have this sort of alien theme once again on August the 12th. Well, here we are again, August the 12th. And, of course, in some of the early promo videos for the London Olympics, they actually had, in the computer graphics, UFOs coming into London.
Oh, really? Now, this was just one of their own releases of?
Yeah, absolutely. Put out by the London Olympic Committee in 2008. I actually incorporated them into a short video that I did, which unfortunately every time I put up on YouTube gets taken down, obviously because of copyright issues.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, and then of course we can't ignore the closing ceremony at Beijing. When, because in the closing ceremony, what happens is that the hosting country, wraps up and then hands the baton over to the hosts of the next Olympics. So in this case, it was the Chinese handing over to London. And the closing 7 minutes of the Beijing Olympics had this incredible choreography and a London bus coming into the center of the arena. And it was a depiction of Tavistock Square, which of course was where the
bombing
of the bus. And then the roof of the bus starts to literally open up. It is a depiction of the London bombing. And of course the London bombings occurred exactly 1 day after London had been awarded the Olympics.
That's right.
London was awarded the Olympics on July the 6th, 2005. And the London bomb occurred on the 7th.
Yeah.
So here we are, a few years later at the Beijing Olympics with a closing ceremony effectively glorifying the events of July 7th, 2005. So, I know it's conjecture. Of course it's conjecture. And of course it may sound to a lot of people as outrageous conjecture. But the reality is that with everything that's occurring, we were even told in the last few days that there is a sonic weapon.
Yes, absolutely. The LRAD sonic gun, they're reeling it all out, aren't they?
Yep. And that's going to be based on a barge in the Thames. And there's going to be 49,000 troops mingling amongst the police. And already the police in London are being supplemented with police from all over the country who are coming into London to help with the policing. I mean, actually, I don't think anybody's got any tickets for the Olympics. It's going to be purely people from the military and the police that are there.
That's funny. Yeah, no one want to be there at that stage. Wow. Yeah.
Well, but the whole Olympic area in this part of London, and of course, I mean, you and I had our very first discussion about this in, I think, March of 2008. And then in the following 2 weeks, I think you had your sessions with Rick Clay.
That's right.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, Rick uncovered a lot of remarkable coincidences about the whole of the East London area that has now become the Olympic Village. So, what has been created there is an 11-mile exclusion zone or inclusion zone, whatever you want to call it. But there's an 11-mile perimeter around the London Olympic Arena. And this 11-mile perimeter can be shut down in a heartbeat. So this whole area can be turned into a concentration camp, keeping people in or keeping people out, whatever. We're talking full body scanners. We're talking G4S having the master security contract.
The G-Force. Yeah, great name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, G4s, yeah. And G4S, I mean, basically, they are blacklisted now by the EU because of their association with the Israeli government and the fact that they provide private security around the in Israeli prisons for political prisoners, and also private security around the West Bank and Gaza.
Wow.
So the EU have blacklisted G4S because of their association with the Israeli government and the work they're doing with the Israeli government.
Well, that's a big red flag considering all the other things we've talked about and the connection to Mossad and Israeli security companies around. I mean, including Fukushima and in many other places as well. Interesting.
Well, it's everything, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it was an Israeli security company that was supposedly responsible for the cameras in the Pont de l'Arma on August the 31st, 1997. It was an Israeli security company that was responsible for the security at all the airports where the planes supposedly took off on 9/11. An Israeli security company that was responsible for security in the World Trade Center on 9/11. An Israeli security company responsible for the security and the CCTV in Madrid on March 11th, 2003. An Israeli security company responsible for the CCTV on the London Underground and on stagecoach buses. And then, as we said, Fukushima. And now at least one of the subcontracted security companies is an Israeli company, and that's been contracted by G4S. So, I mean, nobody in their right minds would engage an Israeli security company unless you wanted to absolutely guarantee that your false flag event was going to go off without too many hitches.
That's a good one. Yeah. Well, what other conclusion can one make? It's one of the common denominators, is it not?
Well, exactly. Now, listen, I mean, I do not have an existential commitment to the fake alien invasion. I'm absolutely of the opinion that the technology exists. And the last film that I was referring to that was released on 4/4/12, the 4th of April this year, is a film called Iron Skies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And this it's a Finnish director. So consequently, there's no possibility that I'd be able to pronounce his name, even if I knew what it was. But it's a Finnish film, and the basic plot is that the Nazis working on the anti-gravity technology, i.e. a reference to the research of Nick Cook, an outstanding journalist who published a book about 11 years ago now called The Hunt for Zero Point, where he looked at all of the evidence to suggest that the Nazis had actually made tremendous progress in their anti-gravity research. Anyway, so the film takes the plot that the Nazis working on the anti-gravity technology weren't spirited away to the US with Operation Paperclip, that they actually made their way to Argentina and then to the Antarctic, where they further developed their anti-gravity technology, and then went to the dark side of the moon, where they have established a colony, and they've continued to develop their anti-gravity technology. And then the dateline of the film actually is 2018, but the basic plot is that the Nazis, using their anti-gravity technology, are returning to Earth, effectively staging a fake alien invasion to establish their Fourth Reich. So, hey, listen, it's all out there. And of course, computer graphics today are incredible. You know, when you think that Independence Day is now 16 years old, that was released in 1996, and the computer graphics on that were pretty damn good. But I mean, the stuff that is possible today, and for the vast majority of people, you know, just like in 1938, when Orson Welles presented War of the Worlds as a news bulletin, if today you presented something like even parts of the film Battleship, you know, which isn't exactly a classic, but some of the computer graphics are absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And if you just presented that as news, a significant chunk of the population would just take it straight in at face value.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas, yeah, in reality, what we have been trying to do for 5 years in the alternative community is basically to say to people, look, if anything, and I mean anything, happens at the London Olympics, which isn't part of the script, be very, very suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the other thing is that we also have to watch out for the old magician's trick of sleight of hand, because, you know, whilst the world is focused on London, let's not be too surprised if the piece of scrap iron that's currently floating in the Persian Gulf by the name of the USS Enterprise, and you know, this is an aircraft carrier in the US fleet that's due to be decommissioned in October of this year. It's powered by 4 nuclear reactors, and in my opinion, it might as well have a massive target painted on it. Because, you know, while the eyes of the world are focused on the London Olympics, don't be too surprised if there's an event involving the USS Enterprise, and of course the blame is put on the Iranians.
When they are also boycotting the Olympic Games.
Because of the overt Zion logo. I wonder who it was that brought that into the public arena. There you go. Anyway, so the Iranians then, of course, are blamed. People are still focused on the London Olympics. They're not taking too much interest. And before we know it, you know, that false flag event is used to launch an attack on Iran, an unprovoked attack on Iran. You know, we've only got to go back to the bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen and the remarkable story that surrounds that, because the CIA sent over one of their most experienced investigators, a guy called John O'Neill, to look at the bombing of the USS Cole, which of course was supposedly bombed by Al-Qaeda. John O'Neill looked at all the evidence and basically came to the conclusion that the attack on the USS Cole actually bore all the hallmarks of an attack by Mossad and most likely had nothing at all to do with Al-Qaeda. Now, the only problem was that John O'Neill happened to share this observation with the US ambassador to Yemen, who was a lady by the name of, I think it was Barbara Bodin or Brodin. It's a while ago since I was looking at this. Barbara Brodin or Barbara Bodin. Anyway, she was Jewish, and she took great exception to John O'Neill's observation that basically it looked like a Mossad attack. So she contacted her bosses at the State Department and demanded that John O'Neill be recalled from Yemen and taken off the investigation. Well, which he was. But he wasn't only just recalled, he was actually ultimately released from the CIA. But he was given a new job. Do you remember what that job was, Henrik? His new job was as head of security of the World Trade Center.
Ah.
Do you know what do you know what his first day of work was?
Well, was it 9/11 then?
Oh, good guess. And have some of this. His body was identified by his former boss. How many bodies were identified from the Trade Center? I mean,
not many, right?
Not many.
No.
And even those that were, it was like, little fragments of DNA.
Yeah.
But in the immediate aftermath, John O'Neill's body was supposedly identified by his former boss. I mean, it's like, come on, people.
Yeah.
This is a massive game. And those of us that have taken the time and the trouble to learn the rules, know how the pieces of the jigsaw fit together. And, we don't expect anybody else to necessarily take what we say at face value. I certainly don't. The only thing that we can ever do is encourage people to actually take a look at this stuff for themselves.
That's right.
And of course, once the first piece of once the first domino falls, it doesn't take much for the rest to fall. Huh?
Now, is the militarization of the Olympics a giveaway for a potential event, meaning we could have something happening? They already have the military there in place to, well, let's say then shoot something out of the sky or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. And of course, if they shoot something out of the sky, where's it going to land?
Yeah, smack in the middle of the Olympic area there, Stratford.
Or smack in the middle of London.
Yeah.
So either way, it's going to be a massive disaster.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of other clues. Like 4 weeks ago, there was a call put out for blood donors to come forward, and they'd even changed the rules so that blood donors could actually give more blood than they would usually be recommended.
Mm-hmm.
So why do they need massive? Of course they're putting it out as, well, we've got to beware the attack by Al Qaeda, by Iran, by whoever the latest bogeyman really is. But they may just go the whole hog, because even though I mean, I have had 2 articles in the British mainstream media over the past 18 months talking about this hypothesis. But the great tragedy is that, those who think they're the rightful rulers of a planetary fiefdom actually get their jollies by knowing that some of us know this stuff, that some of us are actually trying to share it and wake people up. But the vast majority of the masses are so dumbed down, it doesn't matter how much we spell it out. They still can't see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true. What about, briefly the mascots as well? They have a play on this a little bit with Wenlock and Mandeville, the rainbow traveling UFO aliens or whatever they are, right? So,
Oh no, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter where you turn. I mean, you've got the pyramid of the floodlights of the Olympic Stadium.
I mean, we've talked a bit about the scenario, the possibilities, and again, we could be looking at they go to the full extent, as you say, of an fake alien invasion. We could also just be looking at a false flag event that is targeting Iran. Or are there any other possibilities in the scenario?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could be looking at a dirty bomb, because we've seen that scenario presented in fictitious events. In fact, the dirty bomb was part of the scenario that the BBC ran 1 year prior to the London bombings in 7/7. In their fictitious scenario, they had bombs going off at 3 tube stations and a dirty bomb going off in the Docklands. We have the Rockefeller Foundation talking about a virus release. We have them talking about an event, unspecified, killing 13,000 people at the London Olympics. I mean, listen, I absolutely hope to the bottom of my heart that the Olympics actually goes off without a hitch, and that the spectacle isn't used as a focus for them to go and launch whatever it is they want to launch on Iran. But I've got to say, my gut feel is that the socio-psychopathic corporate globalists who think they're the rightful rulers of a planetary fiefdom probably can't let this opportunity pass by without trying to springboard their global government.
Something is this is a great opportunity for them to use it, because there's so many people focusing and looking on this, as it always is, and just the intense militarization of the games has been yet another evidence of the the democratic openness of Western civilization in this case, So,
but the other thing that is concerning, Henrik, let's assume that nothing does happen, and of course that is what we ultimately hope. The other problem is that, with all the enhanced security that is being introduced in London, may become the norm.
Well, so exactly. Yeah.
Also being used as an opportunity to raise the bar in terms, or lower the bar, depending on your point of view, in terms of, what people will accept as invasions of privacy about their person for the privilege of going into London.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's that's bad enough in itself, right there. Really, when you think about it, I've heard from some people who obviously they're going to leave London and rent out their apartment to not only maybe make a little bit of money, but also actually just not be there at all, because it's wow, what a mess.
I for sure will not be anywhere near London either before, during, or after. I mean, that's an absolute given. I mean, I just want to see how this whole thing pans out. But even so, I mean, let's also make the observation that if nothing happens, these guys haven't stopped, haven't given up. And I mean, I have to say that, they'd almost have to be crazy to go ahead with it, because we have had quite a significant amount of publicity on this hypothesis.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Even the Sun newspaper, when I gave a presentation at the Exopolitics event in Leeds last year, I mean, the Sun actually dedicated half a page to my hypothesis about this event at the London Olympics. And it wasn't even a hit piece.
Interesting.
So, it's out there, but, will this stop these guys? It didn't stop them doing the London bombings. And how many people still appreciate the significance of the hoarding that was on the side of the bus that day? Outright terror, bold and brilliant.
Yeah. It could be an echo of things to come. There could also be another level of this. We're talking about programming of people. This idea that they, to a certain extent, need people's imagination and their own realization of these kinds of things to be able to pull it off more, in a better way. Don't know really how to phrase that, but it seems like they put a certain level of the predictive qualities to these kinds of things out there beforehand. So X amounts of people they have it in their back of their heads or unconsciously, and for whatever reason, that seems to be able to then manifest maybe the event further. I don't really know. Yeah.
It's a very, I mean, it's a whole different subject, but you're absolutely right. It's mindscaping. It's what I call mindscaping. And then they have this belief, and they may well be onto something, that if you can mindscape sufficient percentage of the population, if you've got something operating within their subconscious, you can actually bring them into the co-creation process.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Good. Well put. I think that's definitely what's going on there. And they have, for whatever reason, realized that this is how you should work it if you want to have it to be successful anyway, it seems like.
Henrik, I have to say that it's a dilemma that probably crosses my brain more often than I care to perhaps acknowledge. But I often wonder, am I actually helping these socio-psychopaths in some perverse way, by putting this information out there? Because, I'm also participating in potentially in the mindscaping process.
Yeah, but at least you're bringing it to the conscious mind, which I think is a better alternative than to the unconscious and the subliminal programming. But go ahead again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you just preempted my observation there. And it is something that I wrestle with, but my absolute conviction is that it is critical that we actually put it out there, and we encourage people, as you rightly say, to bring it into their conscious mind and actually understand the agenda and the motivation of those who are trying to bring about their one world government, because it is not benign towards humanity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to be an interesting summer, no doubt about that. That's for sure. We'll hope for the best, as we always like to say here.
Listen, ultimately, Henrik, as you know, I am the eternal optimist. And as I've said many times before, sometimes humanity needs a massive kick up the backside to sort of potentially take itself to the next step.
It's true. It's true.
That kick is coming.
You look into the situation of where it's situated in London and Eastern London, and you'll find that it's in two areas. It's separated between Leighton and Leytonstone. And I don't know if you're aware of what a ley line is. If you look into this, the Olympic site is bang on where two ley lines cross over. So we're on about something that's connected to the energy grid of, the world, the lifeblood of the earth, if you want to call it that. Interestingly enough, before when they commenced work on the Olympics 2012 site, they'd organised a massive rave on the Olympic 2012 site, in which no doubt there's a lot of government-sponsored drugs out there and a lot of energy being given off. Think about these energy lines, and they're inviting people to have raves on these sites, alongside holding some of the biggest competitions in the world ever. Think about what's happening with all that energy. It's probably being fed into the system somewhere, and I think that's. I mean, there's a lot of for instance, as far as UFOs are concerned and stuff like that, if you look into UFO sightings and stuff, a lot of them can be attributed to being near ley lines and stuff, because obviously a UFO isn't necessarily something that's definitely fixed in our particular 3D world, something that could be obviously of another dimension of sorts. Obviously, we've laid out a ground plan with a street map of, the Zion Olympics in 2012, like biblical road names left, right and centre, symbology and symbols and everything, it's all over the place. So I sat down and I started thinking to myself, so what is going to happen? Obviously, this is something that's clearly been in the making for, I'd presume that those roads have been named them roads for over 100 years, because the street map hasn't changed in that time. Basically, I've got this kind of feeling that as we're approaching 2012, we're obviously approaching some kind of new cosmological energy of some sort, something involving the universe, which it's probably far too great for any of us to really comprehend at the moment. But working on the mind before matter idea, basically, I envisage what's going on as we're moving closer to this date and we're getting closer to this energy all the time. Manifestation time between kind of, thoughts and manifestation creating themselves into matter is getting shorter. There's a particular force out there that's trying to implicate that 2012 is going to be a huge disaster. And for instance, next year, the man who released Stargate and Independence Day is releasing the film 2012, and it's going to be the biggest disaster movie on record, going for $200 million. Plenty of starving people in the world, but we can spend $200 million on this film. What this film is going to perpetrate, and everyone on the bloody planet is going to know about 2012 for being a disaster. So if what I'm saying is this idea of a mind before matter situation, if the general population are all believing that 2012 is going to come around and it's going to be a disaster, our consciousness could end up manifesting that for us. So the people in power have the technological, the technology to survive such a thing, and the general population don't. It's all about the manifestation of a disaster that they're trying to swing their way by putting out this information to the public.